Diria sylwg a dylan yn sgwyd Ik sy'n da fer marw Ol siachyd y marw Rhain marach na fawch Gyn smalon yn rwy Marach na giol O fi an ysbyfalw A chiwr siafan y chorgo Leog rhaid mi hwyr A mach gywys hoi O drich rhaid mi siogo A yw'n si y piol Y groch iawn ffwrch Mo vriestjek na vader We drooiig een kargjouw Le garige groei Een kulp na skoutkreeg Lem gunha na geige Strieg gauw een lafse Wache bana jou roei Het maakt in Look me good, he should come Diria sylwg a dylan yn sgwyd Big soon da fer marw Ol siachyd cymbadw Rhain marach na fawch Gyn smalon yn rwy Zanieg o'n patcha Gach clach agos carnieg A cychwyd no gar As cawn ffad o mosfwy Canach gyrnach carstian A cnech gaf I lafrain Yn teien dol ffas Sydd y grafan sy'n hwy Matyn mi cwr eisiau cywys Diria sylwg a dylan yn sgwyd Big soon da fer marw Gol siachyd am balw Rhain marach na fawch Gyn smalon yn rwy Rhain marach na fawch
The snow-capped peak of Schiehallion in Athol must have tantalized and taunted Montrose's men as they straggled and stumbled over that winter landscape, forever in pursuit of the elusive Argyle. And so, nothing changes. The numbers are decimated, the uniformed, streamlined camouflage defense against 20th century bullets, not 17th century swords, but Schiehallion remains, and the land. And of course the piper still leads the troops to battle, though no enemy waits at Inverara on Wednesday. 333 years ago, Argyll, at that time a Calvinist supporting the Scottish Presbyterian government, was not exactly waiting either. He'd run for the hills, well, Inverara, believing Montrose to be following with a vast Highland horde. Admittedly, by the time the royalist Montrose had headed south, he'd gathered 3,000 men, after starting with a mere 400. Amongst them was the infamous Colkitto MacDonald from Ulster, a giant at 7 foot, with a liking for the drink and the fighting. Although even in mid-May here the temperature at night drops to below freezing, the weather is nothing like what Montrose had to face. Just imagine the nightmare of travelling this land in December 1644. Ragged, bare-kneed men wrapped in plaid, ripped by heather spikes, sinking sometimes to the chest in deep snow, and even breaking the ice-hardened locks for food. Not for them the luxury of a short break on roads built for fast cars. But there's little luxury in this march even for the Scots Guards, recently more used to guarding palaces than marching. It's taken them 6 weeks of intensive training to be fit for this, and the worst is yet to come. Saturday, late afternoon, a mountainous, retching 19 miles has almost been covered, and slowly over Craig Kynachan, some carrying 38-pound radio sets, cursing but regimented, come a section of Major Smart's battalion. And as the men head for base camp at the Braes of Foss, yet another curious repetition of history was being enacted a mere 10 miles away at Wem. The Mingus were gathering for a clan Cayley, as they probably did those 333 years ago, as Montrose's men waited and watched in the hills. Admittedly, it wasn't in the Weems Inn that the clan piper played for the chieftain. It was the castle a few yards down the road, but we've yet to come to that. It seems that the chieftain at one time betrayed Montrose, so Montrose conceived a great idea as he rested in the hills, and the Mingies played on. Why not capture his betrayer and take him on a little walk to Inverera? Mind you, the Mingies have their own version of that.
People say that he betrayed Montrose, but our story is that when he was marching past here, the clan fired on him. And because the clan fired on him, they came back and took the chief prisoner and took him off, and he was put in prison. But presumably he was released later on and came back to be the clan chief all right.
And how long did he survive after that?
Oh, quite a few years.
But of course your story would be that he just fired on them as they happened to go past.
Yes.
Now they say that in fact he betrayed Montrose.
Well, we don't think so.
But the history books do.
Well, they may be right.
Well, how do you feel tonight, almost recreating history, virtually waiting for Montrose's men to come in and get you?
We're very excited about it. We're very delighted about it.
You won't fire at them tomorrow?
We'd like to.
So history swings full circle, well, with a little help from the present and a tiny bit of imagination as the troops move nearer.
These are my mountains, and this is my land. The graves of my childhood belong me again.
Early morning, and the Mingies, with a little help from their friends, are scanning the horizon for Montrose. Well, Major Smart. This time they're ready to welcome rather than repel, and not a gun in sight. Oh, Mingies of Mingies must have been spinning in his grave. Sure of their welcome this time, having already marched for 3 hours, the guards arrive.
May I, on behalf of our chief, David Mingus of Mingus, welcome you to Castle Mingus. We welcome you as left flank of the 1st Battalion of the Scots Guards. And I'm pleased to say that you're going to get a much more hospitable reception this time than you got when you came on this march in the past. We would like you to come in and join us for a little refreshment, and we welcome you very heartily indeed.
I'm terribly grateful. Thank you.
This is the first time the castle has been seen in its restored glory, having never been fit for public functions since 1911. And whether old Mingus was a betrayer or a little impulsive doesn't really matter in the end. For his descendants, one of the tiniest clans in Scotland, have worked like Trojans to restore their ancestral home, and are always ready with their hospitality for stranger and soldier alike. Well, that's the last drink, and in fact the last rest that these soldiers are going to have for something like 8 hours. They've got a 30-mile trek ahead of them today over some of the roughest land in this whole of Scotland. Mountains, streams, you name it, they're going to walk over it. So we plan to go with them, well, some of the way, and we'll be doing the next report on what the modern-day Montrose army thinks about walking these hills. 1 a.m. at the Scots Guards' second camp on the hills above Killin. The men are exhausted after the toughest stage of the march so far. 30 miles of turf bogs, knee-high heather, and always the mountains. And they're not even halfway through the march on Inverera. But by the next morning, they're heading out of the forest and into Killin. Back straight, caps adjusted, ready for the bemused reception they've been getting as the villagers hear they're coming.
You can stop playing when we get back over the road bridge that we came past just now. All right, then you can stop playing, and we'll march silently, give you a rest for a bit, and then we'll play back up into Achard. Okay?
There's a tremendous pride in this area over Montrose's march, and the people aren't slow to come forward to warn the guardsmen if they so much as deviate by 300 yards from the original route. Of course, there are other spectators en route, but they never venture much of an opinion. The new Montrose, leading his assortment of Scots, Cockneys and Geordies, is Company Commander Major Michael Smart, the type who does things because they're there. Following Montrose's footsteps, have you ever had a sort of a time-geist thing where you felt very Montrose-like at all? Did you get any identification with it?
Not really. I mean, in a way, yes, if I'm leading them over the hills and I'm setting the pace. I suppose there is a certain similarity, but remember, he had 3,000. And I'm only leading about 30 or 35 over the hills.
And what about when you come into Inverera? What sort of sensation is that going to be? Would you like to go and sack the castle?
No, in fact, Montrose didn't sack the castle. It was Colkitto MacDonald who actually sacked it. Montrose came in from the west. I didn't think one wants to put too much into the historical aspect of it. It's a jolly good bit of exercise over the hills and a breath of fresh air, following something, and I think also producing a certain amount of interest. Certainly I've noticed coming through the towns and villages, everybody knows that we're coming, and seems to be frightfully interested, and I get tremendously good advice, being told, oh no, Montrose didn't actually go up that corner of the hill, he went up that a while. I know that one's much steeper, but you really ought to go up the one that Montrose went up, and they all know. They all know.
But the man most